The sun dipped below the horizon, casting an orange hue across the winding road that led away from the city and into the quiet wooded outskirts of San Francisco. Alex Carter, the 38-year-old CEO of a growing tech company, gripped the steering wheel of his sleek black SUV, eyes on the road, his thoughts a million miles away. The hum of the tires against the pavement was the only sound in the otherwise silent car, save for the soft melody coming from the back seat. In the rearview mirror, his daughter Sophie, barely 5 years old, hummed a tune from her ballet class, her pink tutu sparkling faintly in the dimming light. She had spent most of the day learning new steps, twirling in the studio, her small hands clasped in perfect form. Sophie's world was filled with innocence, wonder, and uncomplicated joy. The things Alex had learned to treasure, especially since losing his wife 4 years ago. His mind drifted briefly to the past. His wife Olivia had been the love of his life, the woman who had filled their home with laughter and love, the one who had grounded him. Her sudden death had left a void in him that no success in the corporate world could fill. His life had become an endless cycle of work, obligations, and a single responsibility, raising Sophie. And in many ways that had been enough. At least it had been for him. Sophie's voice broke his reverie, light and soft, yet tinged with the natural curiosity of a child. "Daddy, what's that?" Alex's gaze flicked up, but it took him a moment to register the question. Up ahead, the dimming sunlight reflected off the glass of something in the ditch by the road. The air was thick with the scent of burning wood and something metallic. His foot instinctively pressed the brake, slowing the SUV. The figure ahead began to take shape as he steered the car closer. It wasn't long before Alex realized what he was looking at. Flames. They flickered violently against the trees, casting long shadows on the dirt path ahead. His heart skipped a beat. A silver sedan crumpled and burning at the edge of the road. Smoke curled up into the sky, black and suffocating, thickening with each passing second. It was clear the car was beyond saving, but it could still hold someone inside, trapped and helpless. "Stay in the car, Sophie," Alex instructed, his voice taut with urgency. Without waiting for a reply, he slammed the gear shift into park and threw open the door. As he stepped out of the SUV, a wave of heat rushed to meet him, oppressive and intense, as if the very air had caught fire. It pressed against his chest, but he didn't hesitate. He looked back at Sophie, his daughter's wide eyes peering over the seat, the innocence of childhood still etched on her face. "Don't move. Stay locked in the car," he reminded her. Sophie's nod was small but determined, as if she could sense the gravity of the situation even if she didn't fully understand it. Alex didn't wait another second. His boots crunched against the gravel as he sprinted toward the wreckage, the flames growing higher, licking the front end of the vehicle. He didn't stop to think. There was no time for that. He had to act. His heart raced as he approached, a mix of fear and instinct guiding him. He had no idea what he was about to find, who he would find, but he knew he couldn't just drive by. When he reached the side of the burning sedan, the heat was unbearable. Sweat trickled down his face, mingling with the smoke that burned his lungs. He reached for the driver's side door, but it was already crushed in by the force of the crash. He ducked and peered through the shattered glass, his stomach turning at the sight of what was inside. A woman, half conscious, her face smeared with blood, her long brown hair tangled and singed, slumped against the steering wheel. Her wedding dress, once pure and white, now hung in tatters, the hem scorched by the heat. But what froze Alex in place wasn't the fire or the woman's visible injuries. It was the sight of chains, thick rusty metal that bound her body to the wheel, her wrists shackled in a cruel iron grip. For a moment, Alex couldn't breathe. The confusion and disbelief hit him like a wave. Why was she chained? Who had done this to her? His mind raced, but there was no time to think. He heard her soft, broken plea, barely audible over the sound of the flames. "Help! Help me!" Her voice was weak, frantic, desperate. He didn't think. He didn't have time to think. He just acted. Alex grabbed a fallen branch, using it to smash the remaining glass of the window. The sound of shattering glass was drowned by the roar of the fire, but it didn't matter. His focus was entirely on the woman. She was still alive, but how much longer would she last? The heat was spreading, crawling through the interior of the car. He had seconds, maybe less. "Stay with me," Alex shouted, but his voice barely registered over the growing intensity of the fire. The flames were inching closer to the dashboard, and the acrid smell of gasoline made everything worse. He reached inside, his arms burning as he tried to free her from the chains. They were rusted, too thick to break by hand, but he had no choice but to try. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, locking onto his with a look of raw fear, her green eyes wide and full of terror. For a moment, time seemed to slow as Alex felt the weight of what was happening. She was in danger. He had to get her out. Please. They'll kill me, she choked out, her words a fragmented plea, barely audible. Don't let them take me back, please. Alex's stomach churned. Who was they? What kind of hell had she been living in? He couldn't comprehend the nightmare she had been through, but it didn't matter. The car was about to explode. She was running out of time. Her words hit him harder than the heat of the flames. They'll kill me. With an almost frantic desperation, Alex reached into his back pocket, yanking out his pocket knife, the blade sharp and steady in his grip. He used the knife to cut through the chains, his hands shaking from the heat and the sheer urgency of the moment. The flames were so close now. He could feel the heat singeing his clothes, the smell of smoke filling his nostrils, but it didn't matter. He pulled harder, his muscles straining with each tug, until finally the chains gave way. He didn't waste a second. He grabbed her by the waist, pulling her free, the fire roaring louder in his ears as he dragged her out of the car. His heart pounded in his chest. Every instinct told him to run, to save himself, but he couldn't leave her. He shielded her with his body as he stumbled away from the wreckage, his own limbs shaking with exhaustion and fear. They were almost free, but not yet. Then the car exploded. The shockwave hit him hard, sending a burst of heat and debris into the air. He fell to the ground, still holding on to her, his body shielding hers from the worst of the blast. The world around them was suddenly blinded by flames, the sky crackling with the force of the explosion. Alex barely felt the searing heat, but he knew he had to keep her safe. He pulled her body further from the wreckage, barely aware of the screams of Sophie from the SUV. Sirens wailed in the distance. Help was on its way. But for now, he was the only one who could save her. When the paramedics arrived moments later, Alex had already done everything he could. They took the woman from his arms, rushing her to the nearest hospital. Alex stood there, his body shaking, covered in ash and soot, his hands still trembling from the intensity of the moment. Sophie's small voice called out from the car, breaking through his daze. Daddy, is she okay? Is she going to be okay? Alex took a deep breath, looking at the woman they had just saved. He had no answers for Sophie. Not yet. But he knew one thing. Whatever happened next, he wouldn't let go of her. He would protect her, just as he had promised. And so, with Sophie still in the back seat, Alex turned to face the unknown. Knowing that everything was about to change, Alex sat in the sterile hospital room, the fluorescent lights overhead humming softly as he stared at the unconscious woman in the bed. Her breathing was shallow, barely perceptible beneath the steady rhythm of the heart monitor. The doctors had done their best, but the trauma she had suffered was profound, and Alex couldn't help but wonder if it was too much for her to overcome. He had rescued her, but now, in the stillness of the hospital, the weight of what he had pulled her into settled heavily on his chest. He couldn't stop thinking about the way she had looked at him when he pulled her from the wreckage. Her eyes had been filled with an unspoken terror, something deeper than the pain she had already endured. She had been chained, bound to the steering wheel of a car that was set to burn her alive. That image of a woman desperate for freedom, desperate for help, kept flashing in his mind, and it haunted him. He had done everything in his power to save her, but now she was in a place where he couldn't protect her. The hospital was safe, but the fear in her eyes had told him that it wasn't enough. She had been a prisoner, and as much as Alex wanted to believe that she was free now, the truth was that the scars of her past, both physical and emotional, ran deep. Hours passed before the woman finally stirred, her eyelids fluttering open, her breath shallow and labored. She blinked several times as if trying to adjust to the reality around her. Her eyes were unfocused at first, but then they landed on Alex. The look she gave him was a mixture of confusion and fear, but there was something else there too. Something Alex couldn't quite place. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice a hoarse murmur, barely above a breath. Alex took a step closer, but he didn't reach out to touch her. He knew better than to push her when she was clearly in such a fragile state. Instead, he answered gently, his voice calm and steady. "You're safe," he said softly. "You're in the hospital. I found you in the car. You were trapped." She seemed to register his words slowly, her eyes blinking again as she took in her surroundings. Her gaze flickered to the IV in her arm, the oxygen tube under her nose, and the sterile white walls around her. Then her eyes went back to Alex, and for a moment something seemed to click in her mind. Her expression tightened, her body tensing, and she suddenly seemed to pull away from him, as if trying to shrink, back into the bed. No. The word came out in a rush, a sharp, panicked whisper. Don't let them take me back. Alex froze. Her words were fragmented, strained, but they made something deep inside of him twist painfully. She was still terrified, and for good reason. She was still running, and whatever she had escaped from, it was still chasing her. He took a breath, steadying himself, and leaned forward slightly, his tone softer this time. You're not going anywhere, Alex reassured her. You're safe now. You don't have to worry about them anymore. But the woman, Sophia, as Alex had begun to think of her, looked at him, her face contorted with a mixture of fear and distrust, as if she couldn't believe the words he was saying. Her eyes darted around the room, her gaze haunted, searching for an exit. Alex could see the tension in her body poised like a coiled spring, ready to run again at any moment. I don't know who you are, she whispered, her voice breaking. I don't know where I am. I don't know who to trust. Alex's heart ached. He could understand that. He had no idea who had done this to her, who had broken her, but he knew he couldn't just let her slip away. The fear in her eyes was too real, too raw. He couldn't let it consume her. I'm Alex, he said gently, his voice steady. I'm not going to hurt you, I'm here to help. My daughter and I, we're here for you. Sophia's eyes flickered, with a brief moment of confusion, and then something in her softened, just a little. She didn't respond immediately, but Alex could see her mind turning. She was processing everything, trying to piece together who he was, what had happened, and how she had ended up here. Alex didn't press her. Instead, he gave her space, allowing her time to adjust. He knew it wasn't just the physical injuries that were keeping her so closed off. It was the trauma, the psychological scars she carried, the constant fear of being taken back to whatever hell she had escaped from. It was clear now that the physical damage would heal with time, but the rest of it, the psychological weight, that would take much longer. As the days passed, Alex found himself in a constant state of watchfulness, always ready to step in if Sophia needed something, whether it was food, comfort, or even just someone to sit with her in the quiet moments. She didn't say much, but when she did speak, it was as if she was carefully choosing each word, as though everything she said might give something away. The hours in the hospital room stretched on, but Alex was patient. He never pushed her to remember anything, never demanded answers because he knew better. He knew that when someone had been through something like what she had, what he imagined she had, he had to let her take the lead. He couldn't force her to heal. And then one evening it happened. As the light from the setting sun filtered through the curtains and cast a soft golden glow over the room, Sophia spoke. Her voice was quiet, distant, but there was something different about it this time. The panic had faded, and for the first time, Alex saw a glimpse of something else. Recognition. I remember something, she said, her words slow and deliberate, as if testing them in her mind before they passed her lips. I remember a house with locked doors and windows, no light. The walls were grey. Alex listened intently, his breath caught in his throat. It was a prison, she continued, her voice barely above a whisper. A place where they kept me. And there was a man. His name was Darius. The name echoed in Alex's mind, and suddenly everything clicked. Darius. He had heard that name before. Darius was the one behind the trafficking ring. He was the one who controlled the women, the one who had orchestrated the entire operation that Sophia had been a part of. But what stood out to Alex more than anything was the look in Sophia's eyes when she mentioned him. It wasn't just fear. It was something deeper, something more unsettling. Sophia was no longer just a victim. She was living with the aftermath of a horror that most people couldn't even imagine. And the fact that she was opening up to him, even just a little, made Alex realize how much trust she was placing in him. I don't know who I am anymore, she whispered, more to herself than to him. I don't know if I ever did. Alex sat in silence, his heart heavy. It was clear now. Sophia's past had been much darker than he had initially thought. She had been sold, controlled, and abused, but the fact that she was still fighting meant something. It meant she wasn't completely lost yet. She hadn't given up on herself, even after everything she had endured. Sophia's journey was only just beginning, and Alex knew that he would have to stand beside her through every step of it. He couldn't just save her from the physical danger. He had to help her face the horrors of her past. He had to show her that she could be free. He had to remind her that she was not alone. "You are here," Alex said, his voice low but steady. "And that's what matters. You don't have to face this alone. I won't let you." Sophia's eyes softened just for a moment, and she finally allowed herself to lean into him. In that small, quiet moment, Alex knew that they were both beginning to heal one day at a time. The days that followed Sophia's revelation about her past were filled with a quiet, heavy anticipation. The healing process, both physical and emotional, was slow, but Alex remained by her side, watching her like a protective shadow, ready to catch her whenever she stumbled. Despite her progress, there was always a deep silence between them, an unspoken understanding that she was still far from the person she once was, or the person she might one day become. Alex had seen the remnants of her fear, the cracks in her mind that kept her awake at night, staring into the darkness as if the shadows would swallow her whole. But there was more than just fear in those eyes now. There was a flicker of something Alex hadn't seen before: resilience. Every day it grew stronger, pushing the darkness away a little more. The way she smiled at Sophie, her tiny hands gently brushing through the child's hair as they painted together. The way she seemed to speak with purpose, no longer hesitant or lost in her own thoughts. She was beginning to take ownership of herself again. But the past was never far behind her. One evening, after Sophie had fallen asleep on the couch with her favorite stuffed bunny, Alex found himself alone with Sophia in the kitchen. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the refrigerator, the stillness of the night seeping into the house. The sun had long since set, leaving the city bathed in the soft glow of streetlights. Sophia stood by the window, staring out at the distant hills, her fingers wrapped tightly around the edge of her coffee mug. The steam curled up in delicate tendrils fading into the air. It was a quiet moment, yet Alex knew it was one of significance. She was beginning to speak more often now, but she wasn't saying everything. The walls she had built around herself, the ones that kept her memories locked away, were still there, firmly in place. But there was a shift in the air, something that told Alex she was ready to face the truth of what she had endured. "Sophia," he began, his voice soft but steady, like he had done 1,000 times before, never demanding too much, but always showing her he was here. "I know you're not ready to talk about everything yet, and I won't push you, but I need to know if you're still running, if you're still running from him." Sophia's hand tightened around the mug. She didn't answer at first. Alex could see the muscles in her back stiffen, the way she exhaled slowly, as if searching for the right words. It wasn't easy for her, and he knew that. Darius was a man who had ruined her life, and the idea of facing him was unbearable. But Alex wasn't asking her to face him. He was asking her to face herself, to stop hiding from the trauma that had molded her into someone she didn't recognize. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, Sophia turned to him. Her eyes, once filled with terror, now held something else, something darker. A fury that had long been buried but was finally starting to rise to the surface. "I'm not running," she said, her voice low and raw. "But I don't know if I'll ever be able to forgive myself for what happened, for the things I did just to survive." The pain in her words cut through the quiet like a knife, and Alex felt it deep in his chest. He understood that survival wasn't about choosing the right path. It was about finding any path, any way out of the hell they were forced into. He stepped closer to her, his presence solid and unwavering. "You don't have to forgive yourself yet," Alex said quietly. "Not now. You just have to take it one day at a time. That's all anyone can ask for." Sophia met his eyes, and for the first time in days, Alex saw something close to hope flicker in her gaze. It wasn't much, but it was enough. She wasn't ready to run anymore. Not from the past, not from the pain, and not from herself. She was ready to face whatever came next, even if it terrified her. The next day after breakfast, as Alex was cleaning up the dishes, he caught sight of Sophia, standing in the hallway, her hand resting on the frame of the door to the guest room. He knew she was thinking of something that had been brewing in her mind for days. She hadn't yet shared everything with him, and he was certain there was a piece of her past she hadn't let go of. When she finally spoke, her voice was low, but there was an intensity in her words that grabbed Alex's attention. "I remember something else," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "I remember the day I was sold. It wasn't just a transaction, it was a ceremony. I didn't have a choice. I was chosen by someone who didn't care about what I wanted. All I was to them was an object." Her words hit Alex hard. The realization that this woman, this person who had already been through so much, had been treated like property for someone else's gain. It was too much to bear. His chest tightened, but he didn't say anything. He just listened. Sophia continued, her voice growing steadier as the memories poured out. I was brought to a place, somewhere hidden, like a secret. They dressed me up, put me in that damn dress, the wedding dress. I was supposed to look like something I wasn't. It didn't matter who I was. It didn't matter if I was happy. I was going to be someone's possession. Alex stepped forward, his hand resting gently on her shoulder. That wasn't your fault, Sophia. None of it was your fault. Her eyes filled with unshed tears, but she blinked them away. I didn't want to be there, but when I tried to fight, they locked me away. I learned quickly. Survival was all that mattered. She paused, the silence heavy between them, and Alex's heart broke for her. This woman, this warrior in front of him, had been broken by people who didn't even see her as human. And yet here she was, alive, breathing, choosing to take one step after another, no matter how difficult it was. Survival is more than just breathing, you know, Alex said, his voice barely a whisper. It's about finding something worth living for, and you've already started to do that. Sophia nodded, though her face was conflicted. I'm still scared, she admitted. I don't know if I'll ever be able to truly live again. You will, Alex reassured her. I'm not going anywhere. We'll do this together. You're not alone anymore. The days passed and Sophia grew stronger. Her body healed, though her soul still bore the scars of the nightmare she had endured. But there was something else now, something more powerful than the darkness that had once consumed her. She had found a sense of purpose in the small things, the quiet moments with Sophie, the way Alex cared for her, even in silence. Alex had noticed it too, the way her eyes had begun to change, the way she was starting to find peace within herself. He had saved her that night, but in many ways she had saved him too. His life, once filled with endless work and grief, now felt more complete with every passing day. As Sophia stood at the window again, watching the world outside, Alex knew they were both ready for the next chapter. The past had scarred them, but they were no longer chained to it. They were free, together. And while the road ahead would be uncertain, Alex believed deep down that as long as they had each other, they would continue to heal piece by piece. The world was big, and they had only just begun to face it. But for the first time in a long time, there was a spark of hope in the air. And Sophia, stronger, braver, and more alive than she had ever been before, was ready to face whatever came next. The days blurred into weeks, and the healing process continued in its own fragile, tentative rhythm. The house in Pacific Heights had become a sanctuary of sorts for Alex, Sophie, and now Sophia. The quiet, peaceful atmosphere of the home, which once felt empty in Alex's heart, now held the hum of life again. Sophie's laughter filled the rooms, and even in the stillness of the night there was a sense of peace, a peace that had eluded Alex for years after the loss of his wife, Olivia. But peace, as much as it was needed, didn't change the truth, that Sophia's past had a way of clawing back into her present. Alex had tried to shield her from the haunting memories of her captivity. He had taken care of everything. The doctors, the police reports, the FBI investigations. He had hoped that with each day she spent recovering, the past would start to fade. But Sophia's eyes told a different story. Every now and then, when she thought no one was watching, there was a faraway look in her gaze, a flicker of something deeper. She was no longer running from the physical trauma, but the emotional one still gripped her heart, and she wasn't sure how to let it go. One afternoon, while Sophie was out with friends, Alex found himself standing in the kitchen, staring out the large windows that overlooked the ocean. The view had always been soothing, calming, a reminder of nature's infinite beauty. But today, even the ocean seemed to mock him. The silence in the house had become unbearable. Sophia, who had once been so closed off, had now started opening up, and in the silence of the house, he could hear the faint echoes of her struggle. She wasn't ready to confront everything, he knew that. But there was something in her eyes now, something that told him she was beginning to unravel her story in ways she hadn't before. It was during these moments that Alex found himself at a crossroads, unsure of how much further he could push without breaking something inside of her. He knew there was something she wasn't telling him, something still hidden beneath the layers of fear and pain. And as much as he longed to protect her, to keep her shielded from the ugliness of her past, Alex understood that healing came with the unraveling of the truth. That truth was something Sophia needed to face on her own terms. It was a quiet evening when she finally spoke again. Alex had just finished preparing dinner when Sophia appeared in the doorway, her face a mixture of determination and uncertainty. Her once fragile posture had straightened, and although she still moved carefully, she no longer seemed weighed down by invisible chains. "I need to tell you something," she said, her voice low but clear. The intensity in her tone made Alex stop what he was doing, the knife in his hand halting midair. He didn't say anything. He didn't have to. Alex knew what she was about to say would not come easily, but he wasn't going to interrupt her. Not this time. Sophia took a deep breath, her chest rising and falling as she prepared herself for the words she had held back for so long. "I didn't just escape from that house," she began, her voice shaking only slightly. "I was part of it. I was trained for it." Alex's heart pounded, but he remained still, his gaze never leaving her face. "What do you mean?" he asked softly, though he feared the answer would only add more to the darkness she had already experienced. "I was one of the girls," she whispered, almost as if ashamed of admitting it. "The ones who were picked, groomed, auctioned off. We weren't just held captive. We were meant to be sold. Not for money, but for control. A possession like something you buy and own." The words cut through the quiet, and for a moment Alex felt as if the room was suffocating him. He had known Sophia had endured terrible things, but hearing her admit this, hearing her say it so plainly, like it was just another part of her reality, it tore him apart. "They did everything," she continued, her eyes glazing over as if recalling the worst of her memories. "They taught us how to walk, how to smile, how to act like we didn't have a soul. We were supposed to be quiet, docile, obedient, and when the men came, we were ready. Because we had no other choice. They told us we were special, that this was what we were made for." Alex swallowed, the bitterness rising in his throat. "I can't even imagine what that was like," he murmured. "But you're free now, and that's all that matters." Sophia shook her head slowly. "I'm not free, Alex, not yet. Not until I can face what they did to me, what I let them do." Her words were a whisper of truth that reverberated in the quiet of the room, each syllable a painful release. "The worst part is that I didn't know I could fight back. I didn't know I was allowed to. I thought it was my fate, that it was all I was good for." Alex took a step toward her, his heart aching for this woman who had been broken by a world that didn't care. He reached out, his hand gently brushing against hers, his touch a silent offering of comfort. "You're not that person anymore, Sophia," he said quietly, his voice filled with conviction. "You're here now, and whatever happened before, that's not who you are. Not anymore." Sophia's eyes met his, the weight of her history pressing down on her. But this time there was something different in her gaze. There was a flicker of hope, a recognition that she didn't have to carry the shame of her past forever. She wasn't a prisoner anymore, not in her mind, not in her heart. "I'm not sure how to let it go," she admitted, her voice barely audible. "How to stop feeling like I failed them. The other girls, the ones who didn't get out." Alex squeezed her hand, his fingers strong and steady around hers. "You didn't fail anyone, Sophia. You're here, and that's the most important thing. You're still standing." They stood there for a long moment, the weight of their shared silence heavy in the air. The truth was difficult to face, but in this moment, Alex could feel the shift in Sophia. She was facing it, accepting it, and most importantly, she was not running anymore. She was ready to heal. But it was more than that. It was the beginning of her reclaiming herself, the beginning of her freedom. True freedom. Over the next few days, the quiet in the house felt less suffocating, more peaceful. Alex saw the small ways that Sophia was beginning to open up again. She began to help him more with Sophie, engaging in little moments that had once seemed impossible. Playing in the garden, reading stories, even laughing when Sophie made a silly joke. Alex knew it wasn't just the presence of Sophie that had helped heal Sophia. It was the choice she had made to keep moving forward, to no longer let the ghost of her past define her. Still, there was more work to be done. The FBI was working tirelessly to bring down the rest of the human trafficking ring. But for now, the real battle was not against the men who had used Sophia. It was against the demons she still fought in the quiet of the night. Alex knew he couldn't force her to confront everything, but he would be there, always, whenever she was ready. One evening, after a long day, Alex found himself standing by the window again, looking out at the stars. He felt a presence beside him and turned to find Sophia standing there, her posture different from before, stronger, more at peace. Without saying anything, she stepped closer, her shoulder brushing against his. "I'm not running anymore," she said softly. Alex smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "I know." They didn't need to say more. In that quiet moment, they both understood. It wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about living together and choosing what came next. The past might have shaped them, but it would not dictate their future. Not anymore. It had been weeks since Sophia had stepped foot in Alex's home, the place where she had begun to rebuild her life, one fragile piece at a time. The mornings now had a certain warmth and ease that was different from the darkness she had known. The steady rhythm of her days, helping Alex with Sophie, walking through the garden, cooking dinner together. It was becoming the life she never thought she'd have. It wasn't perfect, but it was healing. Every laugh shared, every quiet moment, spent with Sophie, felt like a small step forward from the woman she once was, the woman who had been a prisoner of her own fear. Yet even as she had begun to regain pieces of herself, the shadow of what she had gone through never fully disappeared. The haunting images of her past still lingered, filling the quiet spaces at night. The moments when Alex and Sophie had fallen asleep, and she was left alone with her thoughts. It was in those moments, when the house was silent and still, that Sophia felt the pull of the life she had left behind. Darius, the fear, the scars. The memory of the chains that had once bound her to a life that wasn't hers was a weight she hadn't figured out how to set down. But in the days that followed, as she and Alex began to take more concrete steps toward confronting her past, things began to change. She wasn't just surviving anymore. She was living. Sophia had never realized just how much she had been holding on to until one afternoon when Alex took Sophie to the park. She found herself standing in the hallway, looking at the old family. Portraits hanging on the walls, images of Alex and his late wife Olivia in their younger years, smiling, carefree. It had been easy for Sophia to see Alex as a figure of strength, the man who had rescued her, the one who had shown her that there was more to life than the survival she had known. But standing there in the quiet, Sophia realized that Alex was also a man who had been through a deep loss, a man who had faced pain and heartbreak that wasn't hers to bear. The realization hit her with a force that left her breathless. They were both healing, but they were healing from different things. It was in that moment that she knew something had to change. She had spent so much time focused on her own recovery, her own trauma, that she had never truly asked Alex how he was holding up, what he was feeling. Alex had been an anchor for her, a steady presence, a source of strength, but he had never asked for anything in return. He hadn't shared much about his own grief. She had never asked. Maybe she had been too caught up in her own recovery to notice his quiet, unspoken pain. Sophie's laughter echoed in the distance, drawing Sophia back to the present. She knew she had to do more. Not just for herself, but for Alex too. She needed to ask him. She needed to give him a chance to share, to let him express the grief he had carried for so long, the grief that hadn't fully healed. They had both been carrying burdens alone, but they no longer had to. They could carry them together. Later that night, after dinner, while Sophie settled in for her bedtime story, Sophia and Alex sat together on the couch. The house felt alive, with warmth, the sound of Sophie's excited voice calling out from upstairs, recounting the story of the princess she had just heard. It was a gentle evening, the kind that filled the heart without asking much. But tonight, Sophia knew, was different. There was something she needed to say. "Alex," she began softly, her voice steady but tentative. "I've been thinking a lot lately. About us." Alex turned to look at her, his brow furrowed slightly, as if sensing the shift in the atmosphere. He didn't speak, only nodded, waiting for her to continue. "I want to thank you," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "for everything. For being here, for being strong when I didn't know how to be. For protecting me, for caring for Sophie, like she's your own." Alex's expression softened, but he didn't interrupt. He didn't need to. Sophia had always been quiet, reserved. But tonight, he could see something in her. A vulnerability he hadn't witnessed before. "I don't think I've truly understood what you've been through until now," she continued. "I've been so focused on my own pain, my own healing. But I know you've carried your own grief, your own loss, and I've never really asked you how you're doing. I never asked you if you're okay. You've been holding me together, and I think I've forgotten that I need to be there for you too. Alex's eyes flickered with surprise, but he didn't pull away. Sophia, you've been through so much. It was never a question of whether I'd be here for you. I've always been here, and I've never asked for anything in return. But I need to ask now, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. You've lost so much too. You lost Olivia, and even though you don't talk about it, I know it's still there. Grief doesn't just disappear. I don't want to keep pretending like I'm the only one who needs healing. The silence stretched between them, heavier than it had ever been. Alex's face softened, and for the first time in months he allowed himself to feel the weight of his own loss. He didn't hide it, didn't mask it with strength. The pain of Olivia's death was still a deep ache, one that never fully went away. But he had been so focused on Sophia's healing, on giving her the stability she so desperately needed, that he had never allowed himself to grieve properly. I've been carrying that weight, he admitted, his voice low, raw. I thought I could just bury it, keep going for Sophie's sake. But you're right, I haven't dealt with it. I didn't want to burden you with it when you were dealing with everything else. But I never asked you how you were doing either. Sophia reached out, her hand gently touching his, the warmth of her touch grounding him. You don't have to carry it alone anymore, Alex, she said softly. Not when we've come this far. Not when I'm here. We can carry it together. For a long moment, Alex simply looked at her, his gaze filled with a mixture of gratitude and love. The truth of their connection, the strength they found in each other, was something that couldn't be undone. They had both been through unimaginable pain, but now they had each other, and together they could face whatever came next. I've never asked for much, Alex said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I think I've been waiting for you to be ready, to let me in. I've seen the pieces of you that you've tried to hide, the parts of you that still carry the weight of what happened. But I know you're not alone anymore, and neither am I. Sophia smiled, tears welling in her eyes, not from sadness but from relief. I'm ready now, she whispered, ready to share the weight, ready to face it all together. And in that moment, something shifted between them. It wasn't just about healing from the past, it was about choosing each other, choosing to move forward, no matter how painful, no matter how uncertain. They were building something new, something stronger than either of them had ever expected. A life together that was defined not by their wounds, but by the love that had emerged from those scars. As the night wore on, the house felt more like a home. Sophie's laughter still echoed through the walls, but now the silence between Alex and Sophia wasn't uncomfortable. It was peaceful. They had found each other, and in doing so, they had found a way to start anew. Not in spite of their pasts, but because of them. Together they would face the future, one step at a time. And that was all they could ask for. Thank you for joining us on this unforgettable journey. If this story touched your heart, inspired your soul, or reminded you of the beauty of second chances, please consider subscribing to Fortune's Wrath, where every week we bring you powerful tales of love, resilience, and hope. Subscribe now and become part of a community that believes in the power of storytelling to heal, to uplift, and to connect us all. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and never stop believing in happy endings.